The wind howled that evening as if winter itself wanted to remind the town that warmth was a privilege, not a guarantee. The streets glistened with rain that had turned to icy slush, puddles reflecting the dim glow of street lamps. People hurried past, collars raised, scarves pulled high, boots splashing against the wet pavement. Among them shuffled a man wrapped in layers of tattered clothing. His beard was overgrown, his hair matted, and his eyes, though dulled by exhaustion, still carried a spark of life that refused to die. His name was Thomas, though most people never bothered to ask. To the world, he was just another homeless man, another forgotten soul fading into the background of city life. That evening, Thomas's stomach twisted in hunger. He hadn't eaten a proper meal in 2 days, and his body ached from sleeping on the cold concrete near the railway station. His hands trembled as he rubbed them together, trying to summon warmth. He had grown used to the indifference of people passing him by, used to muttered apologies or averted gazes. But the hunger gnawed harder than the loneliness. As he walked down a quiet street, a faint golden glow spilled from the windows of a small café tucked between 2 shops. The glass was slightly fogged, and inside he could see families laughing, couples sipping coffee, and the gentle steam rising from bowls of soup. His heart tightened with longing. He paused at the door, shivering. He had no money. He knew he'd likely be thrown out, perhaps even ridiculed, but hunger has a way of silencing pride. With trembling fingers, he pushed open the door. The warm air hit him instantly, carrying the scent of roasted coffee beans, freshly baked bread, and simmering stew. His stomach growled audibly. Conversations inside quieted for a moment as a few heads turned toward him. Thomas lowered his eyes, embarrassed, and slid into the farthest corner table. He didn't order. He couldn't. He simply sat there, shivering and trying to disappear. From behind the counter, the cafe owner, Mr. Lawson, watched him. Lawson was a man in his late 50s, with kind eyes hidden behind spectacles, and a face weathered not just by age, but by years of working long hours to keep his cafe afloat. He noticed Thomas's shaking hands, his sunken cheeks, and the hollow look in his eyes. Instead of asking him to leave, Lawson quietly went to the kitchen. A few minutes later, he returned with a steaming bowl of soup, a thick slice of bread, and a cup of hot tea. Without a word, he set them on Thomas's table. Thomas looked up, startled. I can't pay, he whispered hoarsely. Lawson smiled gently. Don't worry about it. Eat while it's hot. For a moment, Thomas just stared at the meal, his eyes filled with tears that blurred the steam rising from the soup. He lowered his head, whispered a shaky "thank you," and began to eat slowly, savoring every bite as if it were the most precious feast he had ever been given. Around him, the cafe's chatter resumed, but for Thomas, the world had changed in that instant. For once, he wasn't invisible. Someone had seen him, not as a burden, but as a human being. That night, when he left the cafe with a full stomach and warmth in his chest, Thomas carried more than just food in his body. He carried dignity, a gift he hadn't felt in years. Time, as it often does, reshaped everything. The cafe remained a beloved corner of the neighborhood, its reputation built not on grand advertisements, but on the quiet kindness of its owner. Children who once came in for hot cocoa now returned as adults with their own families, always greeted by Lawson's familiar smile. Meanwhile, Thomas's life took a different turn. The memory of that single act of kindness became a spark, igniting his will to change. He sought shelter, enrolled in a rehabilitation program, and slowly pieced his life back together. It wasn't easy. There were nights he wanted to give up, days he felt the world pressing too hard against him. But he kept remembering that night in the cafe, when a stranger reminded him he was worth compassion. Over time, Thomas found work, first in odd jobs, then in a small logistics company. His determination and honesty set him apart. Opportunities came and he seized them. Years rolled by, and the once homeless man who had entered the cafe with nothing but rags eventually became a respected businessman. He wore suits instead of torn coats, drove cars instead of wandering streets, but he never forgot where he had come from, or the man who had believed in him, with nothing more than a bowl of soup. One crisp morning, Lawson opened a letter that had arrived in the mail. He nearly dropped it when he read the words inside. Dear Mr. Lawson, from this day forward, your cafe's rent has been paid for the next 12 months. Consider it a small gesture of gratitude for something you once gave me that was far greater than money. Years ago, you offered me a meal when I had nothing. You restored my dignity. That kindness never left me. Please accept this as a way of saying thank you. Yours sincerely, a friend. Lawson sat at his counter, the letter trembling in his hands. His cafe had been struggling recently. Rents were high, profits low, and this gift meant survival. But more than the money, it was the words that touched him. He tried to recall every face that had passed through his cafe over the years, but he couldn't guess who had sent the letter. It wasn't until weeks later, when a well-dressed man walked into the cafe, that the truth revealed itself. Thomas stood by the door, a warm smile on his face. Lawson squinted, trying to place him. And then recognition dawned. The beard was trimmed, the clothes new, but the eyes, the same eyes that had once been filled with hunger and gratitude, were unmistakable. You, Lawson whispered. Thomas nodded. Me, and I never forgot. For a long moment, the two men simply looked at each other, memories unspoken but deeply understood. Then Lawson stepped forward, pulling Thomas into an embrace. Around them, customers watched in silence, unaware of the story that had just come full circle. A small act of kindness years ago had blossomed into something life-changing. The cafe continued to thrive, not because of the financial gift alone, but because of the spirit it carried, a reminder that kindness never disappears. It ripples outward, touching lives in ways unseen, returning when least expected. For Thomas, that one warm meal had been the seed of transformation. For Lawson, his simple act of compassion had returned as a blessing greater than he ever imagined. And for everyone who heard their story, it became a lesson. Never underestimate the power of a small act of kindness. Sometimes it is not just a meal, or a smile, or a helping hand. Sometimes it is the spark that reignites a life.